Kate Mead, investment strategies for equities in AllianceBernstein. Kate, good afternoon.
Hi, it's great to be here today.
Kate, we saw the first quarterly net outflows for sustainable funds across equity and fixed income in Q4 2023. Are sustainable investments still relevant for investors today?
Yes, you are correct. According to Morningstar, in the final quarter of 2023, global sustainable funds experienced net outflows for the first time on record. So it's a great question to ask. Are investors still interested in sustainable investments today? The net outflows we saw were around $2.5 billion. That sounds like a lot, but I think it's important to recognise that the overall fund universe, so we're thinking about all funds, not just sustainable funds, also saw outflows in that same period. Those outflows were around $17 billion US. So there's definitely outflows coming from all funds, but I think there is still a case to be positive on sustainable funds in particular. We did see outflows, but in 2023, there were actually total net inflows of around $63 billion. And we saw over 500 new product launches in that market as well. And let's not forget, there are still $3 trillion US invested across sustainable global funds, and that's a significant amount. But looking at the past is one data point. Moving forward, a recent survey from Morgan Stanley actually found that 77% of global investors are interested in sustainable investing. And actually more than half of those investors plan to increase their allocation to sustainable investments in 2024. So you are correct. We've seen those outflows across funds, including sustainable funds, but I think there's still reason to be positive moving forward.
The thematic investment team at AllianceBernstein uses the UN SDGs as a core part of identifying investments with access to long-term structural growth. Do these still represent opportunities for your team?
Yeah, definitely. So our philosophy is rooted in the belief that sustainability and financial goals are actually intricately linked. And investors who can target both of those sustainable and financial goals have the potential to capture really strong sources of long-term return potential. So for us, the UN Sustainable Development Goals, or the SDGs, remain a really important guide for us in identifying not only the biggest global challenges facing the world today and in the coming decades, but also help us identify those companies that we can invest in and that support those targets in 2023. But it's not all positive. We've passed the midpoint in the journey towards those 2030 goals, and there is still a lot that needs to be done, and we need still a huge amount of capital to achieve those goals. We have had global economic disruption. We've seen the COVID pandemic, geopolitical tension, financial tightening, and these have all slowed that momentum towards those development goals. As a result, addressing these challenges has actually become ever more urgent. 37% of those SDG targets have made no progress or even regressed in recent years. So you might be thinking, what's the opportunity for us as investors? Well, according to the OECD, the SDG funding gap is estimated at an additional $3.9 trillion on top of the current spend every year. So that gap for us is a huge source of opportunity for private capital to come in and continue to be a key driver of progress towards those SDG goals.
Areas identified as being particularly relevant for private capital spent to achieve the UN SDGs include digital transformation. How do you view this area for investment?
Yeah, exactly. Digital transformation has been identified by the World Economic Forum as an area where private capital can be most effective in driving progress. Digital transformation is a huge area for lots of different topics and investments. And for us, digital transformation goes beyond some of those short-term headlines that we see, some of that noise that we see in the market today. So we look at opportunities in the space that can deliver durable long-term growth for us and our shareholders. For example, infrastructure might not come to mind immediately when you think of digital, but for us, it's a key area that is needed to support that global digitization, and it's going to need spend and build out for many years and decades to come. So we see individual businesses are investing tens of billions of dollars of their own money to build out things like semiconductor manufacturing plants. Capital flows are also coming through hundreds of billions of dollars of government subsidies. So these are huge numbers of capital inflow. One of those subsidies is coming from the US CHIPS and Science Act, which is hoping to boost US domestic semiconductor manufacturing. But that doesn't just build itself. So in our portfolios, we look for companies that will be really well positioned to take advantage of this huge amount of cash spend. So companies that can facilitate those large infrastructure projects by providing design and construction software will benefit. And those companies can increase build efficiency, improve sustainability of projects, and save those companies money. Will all benefit from that infrastructure build out, whether it's for a data center or a semiconductor manufacturing plant. But these companies will also benefit from the build out of things like the energy infrastructure that's also required for some of these projects, and also for more traditional infrastructure like roads and rail spend. But for us, digital transformation isn't just about AI or semiconductors. Think about high-speed internet, something that we're using today between us and hosting our conversation. And it's something that many of us take for granted. But it's a key to greater social inclusion and is also fundamental for digital transformation globally. But today, around 1/3 of the global population are not connected to the internet. And as the world increasingly moves online and we see government spending to boost that broadband rollout, we also see companies exposed to providing that infrastructure for broadband and connectivity are also likely to benefit. So those are just a few of the areas that we're excited about in the digital transformation.
Where else are you excited about the sustainable thematic opportunity set?
Yeah, so healthcare is an area that we've been invested in for a long time, and we also see it as a really strong, sustainable thematic opportunity. Now, healthcare received a lot of attention and a significant boost in the pandemic, and some areas benefited more than others. So we're thinking about all of those tests that people took during the pandemic. We took more vaccines, we potentially bought more preventative medicine and things like that. But other areas of healthcare actually took a hit and maybe weren't as boosted by the pandemic and medical spend. So things like medical device companies, for example, suffered. We saw fewer people going in for elective hospital procedures and utilization rates declined. More recently, we've actually seen some of these headwinds subside. Procedure numbers have picked up and patient utilization is much higher. So this will benefit some of those medical device companies that we look to invest in, as well as other companies in that medical supply chain. So we're thinking about companies that provide consumables and sterilization services to places like hospitals. And also in 2023, the number of drugs successfully approved was one of the highest in the last decade. So that is something that's really exciting for us. We've also seen biotech funding environments pick up dramatically as well. So that's been quite muted for a while, but we've seen some green shoots coming through there. This type of environment should benefit some of our picks and shovels businesses that we invest in. So when we're thinking about companies that run clinical trials to support those drug approval processes, but also provide things like packaging for complex drugs, those are likely to benefit regardless of who wins that race and has a successful drug. So those are just a few of the opportunities that we're excited about today in healthcare and also in the long run.
Kate Mead, investment strategist for equities in AllianceBernstein. It's a pleasure to have you here in Negocios Televisión. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. It's great to speak to you today.